Hank MacLean didn't wipe his memory to escape punishment. He didn't do it out of fear or panic or desperation, and he didn't do it because Lucy defeated him. Hank MacLean wiped his own mind because in his world, that was the correct decision. That is the detail that changes everything. Not the technology, not the twist, not the betrayal itself, but the intention behind it. Fallout Season 2 ends not with a bang, but with a choice so quiet and so deliberate that it's easy to miss how horrifying it really is. Hank doesn't lose in the finale. The system inside him wins, and Lucy is left staring at the most unsettling truth the show has offered so far. Sometimes the monster doesn't fight back. Sometimes it steps aside and lets the machine finish the job. That's what this story is really about. Not mind control as a sci-fi gimmick, not a shocking villain reveal, but the idea that obedience, when rewarded long enough, becomes indistinguishable from morality. Fallout doesn't argue that people are forced into evil. It argues something far worse, that people can be trained to choose it willingly, even when the cost is their own identity. To understand why Hank's decision matters, you have to look at how he's been framed throughout the season. In the finale of Fallout, Hank MacLean is not portrayed as a raving tyrant or a sadistic madman. He's calm, articulate, and painfully rational. Even when his actions are horrifying, his language never is. He doesn't speak like a villain. He speaks like a manager, like an administrator, like someone who believes deeply in process, outcomes, and long-term stability. That's why his attempt to implant Lucy isn't shocking in the way a sudden betrayal would be. It's the logical endpoint of everything he believes. To Hank, control is not cruelty. Control is care. Free will is risk. Choice is inefficiency. From his perspective, Lucy's autonomy isn't something sacred, it's something dangerous. If she won't choose obedience on her own, then obedience must be chosen for her. Not because she hates her, but because he believes he knows better. That's what makes the moment so disturbing. Hank doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't lash out. He calmly prepares to overwrite his daughter's mind as if he's correcting a flaw in a system. Lucy resists him for the first time in a way that actually matters, not just physically, but morally. And when Cooper Howard intervenes, the scene could have taken the most obvious path. Cooper could have killed Hank. The audience would have felt justified. The narrative would have closed the loop cleanly. But Fallout refuses to give us that relief. Instead, Cooper hands the gun to Lucy and walks away. He understands something Lucy doesn't yet. Killing Hank would be mercy. Forcing Lucy to the side forces her to confront who her father truly is and who she is willing to become in response. Lucy doesn't kill him. That decision defines her. Instead of pulling the trigger, she does something far more complicated. She puts the brain-computer interface on Hank himself. And this is where the scene stops being about revenge and turns into psychological horror. Lucy isn't trying to dominate her father. She isn't trying to punish him. She's trying to save him. She still believes, even now, that there is something left underneath the indoctrination. That if she can force honesty, strip away the lies, and expose the truth, then the man who raised her might still be there. So she walks him through the ruins of Lucky 38, holding the remote not like a weapon, but like a lifeline. She asks about the past, about Vault-Tec, about the surface world, about the technology that destroyed countless lives. And Hank talks, but the way he talks is the most revealing part of the entire scene. He never confesses emotionally. He refrains. He abstracts. He turns genocide into experimentation. Enslaved humans become successful prototypes. The surface world is not a tragedy to him. It's a test environment. Every answer is filtered through corporate logic, the language of reports, projections, and results. This is where Fallout becomes brutally honest with its villains. Hank MacLean is not evil because he enjoys suffering. He's evil because he's been trained to value outcomes over people. To him, morality is not about harm, it's about efficiency. Lucy begins to realize the truth. Even now, even with his body under her control, Hank is still protecting the system, still lying by omission, still choosing Vault-Tec over his own child. The mask hasn't slipped, it has fused to his face. And that's when Lucy decides she can't let this continue. She's going to wipe his memory herself, not to enslave him, but to remove the poison that turned him into this person. In her mind, this is justice mixed with mercy. Hank never lets her do it. Instead, he reaches into his pocket and activates the backup remote, a failsafe he always carried, not to escape, not to fight, but to comply. He wipes his own mind before Lucy can extract the final truth. This is the moment the entire season crystallizes. Hank's choice is not self-preservation, it's devotion. He would rather erase his own identity than risk revealing Vault-Tec secrets. He chooses silence over truth, oblivion over disobedience. This is compliance perfected. The technology itself isn't the true horror. The horror is that Hank doesn't need to be forced. He doesn't need to be threatened. The system trained him so thoroughly that self-erasure feels like the moral choice. By the time the implant activates, Hank is already gone. The machine doesn't destroy him, it simply completes a process that began long before the finale. Lucy realizes it almost immediately. The man standing in front of her can speak, he can react, he can smile, but he isn't Hank anymore. The father she knew, even the version she hated, no longer exists. There's no villain left to confront, no confession to extract, no victory to savor, just absence. And that absence is what breaks her. Lucy isn't just losing her father, she's losing the framework she used to understand evil. All season long, she believed monsters were created by radiation, war, or chaos. Hank proves something far more unsettling. Monsters are created by systems, by incentives, by promotions, by cultures that reward silence and punish truth. Hank didn't wake up one day and decide to be evil. He was shaped, reinforced, praised, and when the moment came, he chose the system because the system taught him that obedience was morality. This is the real turning point of Lucy's arc. As she processes what Hank has done, the world doesn't pause to let her grieve. Maximus returns. The larger conflict snaps back into focus. The Legion is mobilizing. New Vegas is on the brink. The enslaved human robots Hank referenced are not hypothetical threats. They are already in motion. Lucy is left with a devastating question she can't escape. If she had surrendered, if she had let Hank control her, could all of this bloodshed have been avoided? Fallout refuses to give her a comforting answer. When Lucy reunites with Maximus, the story shifts from personal tragedy to looming catastrophe. The NCR, the Freesiders, and House's cold fusion-powered machinations all begin to align. On the surface, this looks like a familiar Fallout endgame. Factions positioning themselves, annihilation on the table, power concentrated in the hands of those willing to press a button. But emotionally, everything has changed. Lucy has seen what victory looks like when it's built on control. She has watched her own father erase himself rather than disobey. Erasing the Legion would be easy. Pressing a button would be easy. Hank proved that. Living with the consequences, becoming the kind of person who believes obedience is worth any cost, is the real horror. That's why Hank wiping his own mind is the darkest moment of the season. It's not just a shocking twist, it's a thesis statement. Fallout is telling us that the most dangerous villains aren't tyrants who crave power. They're people who believe obedience is virtue. People who see themselves as responsible, necessary, and correct. Hank MacLean never thought of himself as a monster, and that's exactly why he was one. His final act doesn't end his influence, it preserves it. The secrets remain buried, the truth stays fragmented, the system survives. Lucy is left to fight a war built on the same logic that erased her father. That is the real tragedy of Fallout Season 2 finale. Not that Hank dies, not that Lucy fails, but that the system doesn't need Hank anymore, because it already taught someone else how to obey. And that is why Hank MacLean's choice is worse than death. Death would have ended his control. Erasure lets it live on.